Turn up your radio dial. Bottom of the sixth starts right now.
Welcome into your Wednesday edition of Bottom of the Sixth. This is your host, Gavin Shaw, along with co-host Jacob Garcia. Is Jake Gaden sick? We hope he feels much better, but he will not be on the show today. And
natural selection at its finest, guys. Survival of the fittest obviously picked the better Jake, and I'm just happy to be here.
We've been debating all year, and Jacob Garcia has taken the title for a better Jake. Sorry, Jake Gaden. You can reclaim it next week. And now, let's talk some ASU football. Jake, they struggled last week against the Utah Utes, coming out with a 20-19 victory, but for a lot of the game, it looked like they weren't even going to get that. Talk a little bit about ASU's resilience and what they had to do to win that game.
Well, yeah, first off, Taylor Kelly appeared to be reverting back to his old, unconfident ways. He did finish the game 19 for 31 for 144 yards, but, guys, this was obviously the best played game from ASU's defense. The defense kept them in the game from the start. Chris Young had a career-high 14 tackles. Will Sutton had 9 tackles, and then the decisive interception. Robert Nelson also had an unreal acrobatic interception, and Davon Coleman and Gannon Conway each combined for 2.5 sacks and 11 tackles. So, Gavin, I really think that style points are overrated here. True champions can win ugly games, and that's exactly what ASU did.
I completely agree with you, Jake. When you go through a 13-game college football season, there's going to be grueling stretches. ASU just came off on, I know they won their last 3 games, but there's going to be times when you're not playing your best and you're in a tough environment and you still have to pull out a win. I think in a lot of ways, with the exception of the Washington victory, this was ASU's most impressive victory of the year. They weren't playing well. They were going against one of the better pass rushers in the country. Utah came into the game 3rd in the country in sacks per game, and they more than lived up to that, getting 6 sacks on the mobile Taylor Kelly. 2 guys on the ASU offense who really stepped up. Marion Grice had 20 carries, 136 yards, including a big 80 yards in the fourth quarter. And the offensive line wasn't necessarily playing their best game, obviously from a pass protection perspective, but Grice just bounced off tackles. Utah is known for having particularly physically strong defenders, and yet they could not bring Grice to the ground, and I really think Grice inspired that offense in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and how about the performance by Rick Smith?
That's the other guy who
he finally seems to be gaining confidence, starting to prove his worth. He had 4 catches for 36 yards, caught all 4 targets, and he had a touchdown, which was essentially the game-winning touchdown with 2 minutes and 40 seconds remaining, and it's starting to look like his early season woes are a thing of the past, and he's really starting to move forward now.
I completely agree with that, Jake. And that's so big for them. Kevin Ozier, I believe, is dealing with a minor injury right now. He did not have I don't even know if he played last game, but they're going to really need Rick Smith to step up as a secondary target. Jalen Strong only had 3 catches for 8 yards. He's clearly not 100% healthy, and I think it's time for us to move on to next week. ASU is a big game in Tempe against Oregon State. Jake, give me your early take on that game.
Well, Oregon State has one of the most prolific offenses in the entire country and definitely in the Pac-12. They average 404 yards per game, and their quarterback, Sean Mannion, leads the NCAA with 393 pass yards per game. But to give him all the credit would be a little bit short-sighted. They do have arguably the best wide receiver in the entire country in Brandon Cooks, who's a leading candidate to receive I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. It's just the award that goes to the best wide receiver in the country, let's just say that. He leads the nation in receiving yards and in touchdowns, and his talent really can't be stressed enough. Coach Todd Graham has practically spent the entire week preparing for him. He reminds me of Demaryius Thomas. They run all kinds of exotic screens with him. He has the capabilities to go up for a jump ball. His quickness is just unbelievable. So, again, ASU's defense stepped up against Utah, and they'll have to repeat that performance against Oregon State.
Yeah, well, Coach Graham actually came out and said Cooks is the best overall player they faced, regardless of position, that they faced all season. So that's obviously huge praise for Cooks. What ASU is going to have to do, one way you stop that attack is by staying disciplined. Jake just told you guys they're going to try to run a lot of screens, get in the ball any way they can. If ASU stays disciplined on defense, forces 3rd and longs, and then gets that big pass rush going, I can see ASU really pulling out a big victory. They're undefeated at home all year. I don't see that changing. From an offensive perspective for ASU, one thing they have to do is attack the deep ball. Oregon State has been playing their safeties in all year. Washington, obviously, it was earlier in the year. Their defense has been playing much better of late. They held Stanford to 20, USC to 19. Both of those games losses, but not on the defense. But earlier in the year, Eastern Washington had they're a Division II school, but they had a similar attack.
FCS.